Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay. The Executive Committee will reconvene from a previously recessed hearing of the other day. We're going to open, for the record, let me indicate that we have some replacements. Representative Acevedo is being replaced by Representative Gordon Booth. Representative Turner is being replaced by Representative Hoffman. Is that it? And Representative Hayes is being replaced by Representative Butler. Add Representative Jackson to the roll, Madam Clerk. Representative Hoffman, are you prepared for House Bill 335?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I believe that there are two amendments that we would like to have recommended for adoption. The first is amendment number 2. This deals with the ADW, Advanced Deposit Wagering, and there is a sunset date for February 1st of 2017. This would simply extend the sunset date to December 31st, 2018. And then the second amendment is basically a technical amendment regarding the standard Breeders Advisory Board, and it makes sure that a defunct organization which had a member on the board would allow the standard breeders to still have a member on the board. That's number 4.
Great. Any discussion? There are witnesses carrying to offer testimony in this matter. Mr. Sullivan, anything further? Mr. Rita moves that we do recommend for consideration both House Floor Amendment number 2 and 4. And on that motion, is there leave for the attendance roll? Leave for the attendance roll is granted. This matter will be favorably reported to the full House. Thank you, Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee.
We have Representative Mitchell is here on House Joint Resolution 59. Constitutional amendment, so be sharp, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I come before the committee to present House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment number 59, which would send a question to the ballot that would allow us to eliminate the flat tax structure that we currently have in Illinois and ask the voters whether or not they would be willing to consider a different structure that would allow for a graduated rate, which would mean lower rates for lower incomes and higher rates for higher incomes. Currently, 33 states and D.C. have a progressive income tax, a fair tax. As many of you know, if we tried to impose the type of flat tax we have in Illinois nationally, you'd be to the right of every Republican in Washington. This gives us the flexibility to cut taxes on working families and ensure that revenue is based on ability to pay. Right now in Illinois, if you count sales taxes, property taxes, and other consumption taxes, middle-class families pay twice as much as a share of their income compared to the top 1%. This flexibility, assuming that the voters selected it, would give us the flexibility to finally design a tax system that is fair. That is all this amendment does, is put the option to the voters to elect a fair tax system. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Sullivan.
Representative, so there's two parts to the whole concept of going to a graduated income tax. Yours is the first part that has to happen first, and that is the voters have to decide whether they want to change from a flat tax to a graduated tax.
Correct.
And so from there, we have a trailer bill that has been passed out of this committee by Representative Lang, House Bill 689, that sets into statute what those rates would be. Is that a fair
That's correct.
discussion? Now, we had some discussions yesterday between the millionaire's tax and Representative Lang's bill and how that would work. I guess what was discussed is those could change over time. And so what is put forth to the voters as your bill is being discussed, should it make it to the ballot, and we're talking about this to the voters, we'll be talking about a top rate of 9.75 for that amount of money above $1 million.
That's according to that proposed rate structure, which, as you heard both from the sponsor and from the Speaker of the House, could potentially change if, for example, the Millionaire's Amendment had passed yesterday.
Okay, so anything could happen. We could add the millionaire's tax, and so the top rate above $1 million would be 12.75, or we could choose to change that if we wanted.
Or you could choose to lower it. I mean, that would be sort of at the will of the General Assembly.
Okay, so all this would be the will of the General Assembly. Yours is just procedurally to the people of Illinois. Do you want flat? Do you want progressive?
That's correct. It would be a
Okay.
ballot question.
We also had a couple other issues that went on yesterday to let the people decide how to tax themselves in regard to property taxes. Do you not think that's, I see that you voted against that. Why would we not give people the ability to raise or lower their property taxes?
So it's my understanding that the legislation yesterday was a property tax freeze, which, as I understand it, could potentially limit the ability of local governments to raise the revenue they need for the services that they require. I just don't necessarily think that's policy the General Assembly should be setting. That is, again, a freeze.
Well, the
It
policy
doesn't-
was, well, we're going to just leave it the way it is, and if you want to change it, go to referendum.
Well, I think if folks wanted to lower it, for example, at their local government level, they could have done that as well. I think that we're a democratic republic. We elect representatives, and those representatives make some decisions for us. In this case, because of the way the Constitution is set, we cannot currently make that decision, and the voters would have a chance to change that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Are there any witnesses caring to offer testimony in this matter? Seeing none, please jump in. The water's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Keith Statz. I'm the director of the Tax Institute of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. We're here in opposition to the graduated income tax amendment. We believe that the current flat rate broad-based tax in Illinois represents sound tax policy that was wisely put into place by the drafters of the Constitution. This amendment would eliminate the flat rate requirement for individuals and corporations. It also retains the current 8-to-5 ratio in the Constitution between the corporate income tax and the individual income tax. And from this proposal, it's unclear how that ratio would continue to operate in a graduated income tax rate setting. Under the current structure, the more income you earn, the more tax you pay. The current structure puts forth a stable tax base. The graduated income tax rate, if it were adopted, would result in a more volatile tax base. High-income individuals and corporations have variable income rates, and this exacerbates the effects of recessions like we had in 2008, 2009. It's only necessary to look at the experience of California, which has had a graduated income tax for many years, to see the impact of that rate structure on the budget in bad times. One of the advantages of the current flat rate structure is, frankly, it makes it difficult politically to raise the income tax rate because you have to raise the rate on everyone. You can't just go in and increase the tax rate on the rich or on corporations, however you want to define the rich. And under the current structure, there are some things that are put into place to lessen the burden on lower tax rate individuals. I would point out the earned income tax credit, which provides a credit and a refund in certain situations for lower income people. There's also the exemption in current law for retirement income that protects low-rate seniors. Business owners who structure their affairs as S corporations and sole proprietorships are going to be adversely affected by a graduated income tax rate structure because they're going to be taxed as individuals on the income from those businesses. And they're going to be subject to those high tax rates in good years. But in bad years, unlike the case of corporations, they're not going to be able to carry forward their net operating losses to the bad years to smooth out the income level between the good years and the bad years. The current legislative proposal that's out there, Senator Lang's bill, promises a tax cut to over 99% of taxpayers. But as has already been discussed, there is nothing that precludes the General Assembly from one, not adopting that proposal, adopting a different proposal, and modifying that proposal to increase rates and add brackets. And for these reasons, the Illinois Chamber of Commerce stands opposed to this constitutional amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any further discussion? Any other witnesses caring to offer testimony in this matter? Any other questions? Mr. Rita moves do pass. And on that motion, is there leave for the partisan roll? Leave for partisan roll is granted. This matter will be favorably reported to the full House. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing further for our committee to consider this morning, and we will stand in recess until the call of the chair.